What's today? It's March 11th, so we are just over a week away from Crimson Desert releasing on the Mac App Store, as well as Steam, as well as across the console platforms and GeForce Now and the Epic Game Store as well. So it's releasing on a lot of different storefronts, which is great, but in this video I'm interested in what's going on in the App Store. Now, I noticed a couple days ago they added this to their announcements here: PC, console, Mac performance specs. Now, it's important to note here that they say performance specs, not what are the hardware requirements. Now let's delve into this. So this is PC up at the top. What the hell is this? Oh, this is the Xbox mobile thing that they came out with. Okay. Now, the most important bit for me and probably a lot of the people who actually watch my videos, since most of my videos are Mac gaming related, is the Mac specifications. Now, a lot of interesting things in here. Now, if we go back to Steam, I mentioned this in my previous videos, but if we go onto Steam and scroll down and we look at the system requirements for Mac, it said minimum Apple M2 Pro 16 gig of RAM. And if we go to the recommended, they're recommending a minimum M3 Pro. Wait a second, it actually looks like they've changed this. So I mentioned this in my previous videos that they had like the graphics for the recommended, I think it said like M3 Pro, and then the processor, it showed M2 Pro or something, and I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. They have to be exactly the same. These are unified chips after all. So it looks like they did update this. Minimum, they're saying M2 Pro, and recommended M3 Pro on the lower end. 16 gig of RAM in both cases. Okay, this is the curious bit. If we go over to the App Store, it does not say that. It just says requires a Mac with Apple M1 chip or later. And in my previous videos, I would say, especially while watching the gameplay in the trailers and stuff, I was just like, there's no way this game is going to be running on an M1. There is absolutely no way. And it's just hilarious that it says in here, you know, if you have an M1, it's compatible. Well, I'm sure it's compatible, but is it actually going to run? I don't know. I find that hard to believe. And clearly we can see here, you know, the minimum requirements is an M2 Pro. And you know what? That's very upsetting because I got an M2 MacBook Air. I do have 16 gig of RAM, but it ain't no Pro chip. It's just the M2. So I don't know. I'm going to download it regardless and just see. I mean, it says M1 chip or later. I mean, it should. So when I look at this in the Mac App Store, it should say this game is compatible with your Mac. I don't have the Mac App Store open at the moment. I'm on the web. But yeah, this should say it's compatible with my Mac. Anyways, let's jump back over to the specs. So minimum requirements. It's saying an M2 Pro. So this is in alignment with what is on Steam. So it is saying minimum M2 Pro, minimum M2 Pro. And with this minimum configuration, it's saying that you're probably going to get 30 FPS with, what is this saying here? 720p, 900p. Is this with upscaling turned on? So if you upscale to 900p, you'll get 30 FPS, or you just keep it at the native render resolution, it stays at 720. Is that how I'm reading this, or no? macOS 15 versus macOS 26. Interesting that with macOS 26, it's getting a higher frame rate. I believe why we're seeing that difference is because macOS 26 Plus has Metal 4. I'm not 100% sure on why Metal 4. I mean, I don't know the technical side of things, but I do know that Metal 4 introduces some new capabilities. And maybe that is why. So it says introduces first-class support for machine learning, native support for tensors in both API and shading language. Again, this is way over my head, but I believe that's what's happening here. Is the reason that we're seeing a higher FPS output for macOS 26 Plus is due to the new Metal framework, Metal 4. And I mean, if I'm wrong, someone can correct me, but I believe that's what's going on there. But the big takeaway, minimum requirements, M2 Pro, and you're probably going to get around 720p, 30 to 60 FPS, if I'm reading this correctly. And I'm assuming this slash here is saying upscale, if I'm reading this correctly. Or wait a second, or is this showing the range if you're using an M3 or an M4? Not sure. And this is ray tracing. So you can't have, so M2 Pro doesn't support ray tracing, M3 and M4 does support ray tracing, hence why we're seeing this. Anyways, it's a bit confusing how this is written here. Again, I'm going to assume that, okay, stop doing that. I'm going to assume that this is Metal FX upscaling on, this is Metal FX upscaling off. That's how I'm going to read it. Not sure. Now let's switch over. So that's minimum. Let's switch over to recommended. So it's recommending an M3 Pro, an M4 Pro, or an M5. All of those supporting ray tracing. And with this configuration, we are seeing 1080p 30 FPS or 1080p 60 FPS if you're running macOS 26 Plus. Again, I think that's because of Metal 4, if I'm not mistaken. Now, if we switch over to high or even ultra, we're looking at the M2 Max, M3 Max, M3 Ultra, or M4 Max. All of these except the M2 Max supporting ray tracing, and we are getting 1440p 30 and 60, and 4K 40 and 60 for the ultra end of the configuration here. Now, one of the things that we can take away from this, well, the first thing is that I don't think my M2 MacBook Air is going to perform very well. I mean, I think that's the big takeaway for me. But I think another thing we can take away from looking at this is that this game, just going by the trailers and the gameplay videos that the team has been putting out, clearly this is a very intensive, graphically intensive game. So we can sort of use this specification chart right here. If you're in the market for buying a Mac and maybe in the back of your mind you're thinking, I want to play games on this Mac, this is a good thing to go by. This is a good chart to have. You know, if you're someone who wants to play games like this game, like Crimson Desert, this is your chart. You know, if you're in the market for a Mac and you're saying, I want to play Crimson Desert and I want to play at, 1440p and target 30 or 60 FPS, here you go. You're going to be looking at an M2 Max or an M3 Max. Am I okay playing at 720p and getting 30 FPS? Okay, then an M2 Pro is going to be sufficient for you. If you want to have ray tracing, well, now you're looking at an M3 or an M4, right? So these charts are great for a lot of different purposes, not just figuring out what your Mac right now can actually output for this particular game. Now, for all of these configurations, they are saying RAM 16 gig. And for storage, interestingly here, they say storage for Steam is 150, storage for the App Store is 150. That's a bit curious because on Steam, it does say 150 available space is required, but on the App Store, it's actually saying 167.9. So that's interesting how they're showing the same here, but it is different on the actual storefronts. It says here, we recommend using macOS 26 Tahoe or later version for optimal performance and stability. So you know what? Let's open up a Google AI here. Let's just type in hello here so we can get the Google AI. I noticed that why is that? So let's just ask this question here, just out of curiosity. I do think it has something to do with Metal 4, but we're going to find out right now. So I noticed that Crimson Desert, which is a new game and is coming to the Mac, is saying that if you are using a machine that is running macOS 15, the performance is lower than the same machine with the same hardware running macOS 26 or later. Why is that? The performance difference for Crimson Desert between macOS 15 and macOS 26 is primarily due to the introduction of advanced Metal FX frame interpolation. Wow, that is a term. In the newer operating system. While your hardware remains the same, macOS 26 unlocks software-level features that allow the game to achieve significantly higher frame rates. This new technology, available starting with macOS 26, can effectively double the perceived, that's interesting, the perceived frame rate across all hardware tiers by generating intermediate frames between those rendered by the GPU. Okay, interesting. And you know what? Apple probably explained all this during some of their events and I just wasn't paying attention, which, par for the course. So, Metal FX upscaling versus interpolation. On macOS 15, the game is limited to standard Metal FX upscaling, improving resolution from a lower quality source, yes. In contrast, macOS 26 supports both upscaling and interpolation, allowing targets like 4K at 60 FPS on high-end chips that otherwise only reach 40 FPS on macOS 15. So targeted optimization. The game is likely built using Metal 4, which requires macOS 26 to use its most advanced optimization and stability features. Got it. Hence why Pearl Abyss is recommending using a Mac with macOS 26 for the best experience. That's pretty cool. In plain language. Let's just ask how this works, just out of curiosity here. Think of frame interpolation as an AI animator that fills in the blanks to make motion look smoother. Interesting. So I'm assuming every time frames are getting generated by the GPU, this AI system that's functioning in the background, and this is software, not hardware. This software is basically interpreting the frames in between the frames to effectively double the amount of frames. Instead of the hardware doing the heavy lifting to draw every single detail from scratch, the system uses 2 real frames to guess what should happen in between them. Yep. The game engine renders 2 real frames, frame A and frame B. The system looks at motion vectors, which are essentially invisible arrows telling the computer where every object is moving. Using those arrows and a bit of AI, it draws a fake frame that sits exactly in the middle of the 2 real ones. Your eyes end up seeing 60 images per second, even though the computer only fully worked on 30 of them. That's pretty bloody cool. Now, is this being done, like, I'm assuming Apple's not the first to do this. No. So this is not something new necessarily. While Metal FX frame interpolation is a major addition for Mac gaming, similar frame generation technologies have been available on PC for several years. Okay. So I don't really know much about the technical side of gaming, so this is kind of interesting. I'm sort of, I'm learning on my own here, which is great, and it's always interesting. But it's great to see that Apple is adopting some of these technologies and software enhancements themselves, which is great. This particular mechanism, or whatever you want to call this technology, it's very gaming focused, I would say. I'm not sure if there's any sort of situations where this would be hugely beneficial outside of gaming. Like, this seems to be very gaming focused, and that is a good sign, right? If Apple is putting this much work into developing systems and technologies that support gaming and make gaming better on their platforms, I mean, that's a good sign. That's a good sign for the future of Mac gaming. Now, I think that's where we'll call it on this particular topic. Again, Crimson Desert is coming out in just over a week, so everyone should be getting pretty excited. I'm going to be getting it on my M2 MacBook Air. I know it says that, it's not supported in here. However, I have a suspicion that the Mac App Store is going to say that it's compatible, but how is it going to perform? Probably pretty bad. Probably well under 30 FPS. Maybe it would allow me to do upscale it to 720p or even lower and try to get 30 FPS. I don't know. We'll see what happens. Maybe it won't even let me download the game. I have no idea. We'll see. Anyways, just before I end this video, I do want to do another kind of it's like a quick shout out to Dredge. I always, like, in my last video I talked about Dredge, now I'm talking about Dredge again. Dredge is such an amazing game, and big news here, it's coming to Apple Arcade. The complete edition of the acclaimed fishing adventure on Apple Arcade. This version includes all released DLC content, the Pale Reach, the Iron Rig, Blackstone Key, and the custom rod. Players can experience the full breadth of this haunting maritime journey as they traverse foggy archipelagos, dredge up treasures from the depths, and uncover mysteries lurking beneath the waves. So this is such an amazing game. The fact that it's coming to Apple Arcade is just incredible. And you know what? I've played the Pale Reach. I have not played the Iron Rig. And I was considering buying the DLC for it. Now I don't have to. I was already planning on subscribing to Apple Arcade for at least a month to play that new RPG game that just recently came out. What was it called? Ocean... Latest news, more from Apple. There it is, Oceanhorn 3. So I mentioned in my other video when I was actually talking about this game, I do want to get Apple Arcade for at least a month to give Oceanhorn 3 a go, sort of a Zelda-like game on mobile, except I'm going to be playing it on Mac. But even better, coming in April, what is it, April 1st? On April 2nd, Dredge Plus is going to come out as well, so I'll hop back into that. And you know what? I don't think any of my Dredge gameplay videos I kept on YouTube. I'm not going to go into that. So I'll make a whole new playlist for Dredge, and we'll go through the entire game again. And I'm looking forward to the Iron Rig DLC, since I didn't play it the first time. So anyways, that's it for this video. Super excited for Crimson Desert. Maybe a bit less excited now, seeing that Steam has kind of confirmed my suspicions that the game probably isn't going to perform very well on my M2 MacBook Air, if it even allows me to download it at all. But we'll give it a go regardless and see what happens. Okay, that's it for this video. I will see you in the next one. See you later.